Okay, let's get underway. Welcome. Hi, my name is Jim Ham, Customer Success Manager here at KeyShot. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for attending the WebViewer webinar on this fine Tuesday afternoon. I, for one, am very excited to see you, for all of you to see KeyShot's latest product, the WebViewer in action. Hopefully, this webinar will give you a good introductory understanding of how to use this powerful tool and incorporate it into your workflow for maximum impact. Before we get started, I'd like to highlight our community platform, KeyShot Luminaries. KeyShot Luminaries is a community platform where KeyShot enthusiasts and users of all different experience levels gather to collaborate and share knowledge. Whether you use it to connect with other users on discussion boards, join challenges, or participate in beta testing, the Luminaries is the go-to place for all things KeyShot. If you aren't a member already, I highly recommend you check it out. If you join today using the QR code on the screen, you will automatically be entered into a raffle for 500 points and free KeyShot swag. Those of you who are members already, don't worry, just drop a note in the Q&A and we'll make sure you're added to the raffle as well. Okay, finally, just to address a few last things before we get underway, if you have any questions, please feel free to click the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Our product team will be monitoring your questions and respond back in real time with answers to all your technical and creative questions. For more in-depth questions, please feel free to email me at jimin.ham@luxion.com. Finally, this webinar will be recorded and posted on our YouTube page, so please feel free to revisit at any time and, of course, to share with all your friends and colleagues. Okay, with all that said, it's time to introduce today's presenter, an avid self-proclaimed fanboy for over a decade and with 7+ years experience working here at KeyShot. I'm proud to introduce my colleague and dear friend, Jordan. Thank you, Jordan, for being here. The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. I recognize a lot of names in here. Like Jimin said, I've been with KeyShot just short of 8 years, using the software for about a decade. A lot of you might have talked to me at demos, trade shows, KeyShot events, sales calls, but we're really glad that you all made it today. And we're really excited to show you this new add-on. So let's jump into it. So what is KeyShot WebViewer? KeyShot WebViewer is a new add-on for KeyShot 2023 Pro subscription licenses. This is a culmination of over a decade's worth of innovation from the KeyShot team. This tool allows for rapid design review and eliminates the need to render individual images. You can now quickly generate a file that's remarkably easy to share and includes all of your material and geometry variations. KeyShot can now upload a render for you to your own personal cloud library and provide a shareable URL. How many times have you needed to present a KeyShot scene to a client, a vendor, a colleague, or potential customer? Have you run into a time crunch in terms of setting up the scene? Have you run into limitations in the terms of file types you can provide? Have you run into issues due to that person or that department not having access to a license of KeyShot? KeyShot WebViewer is designed to address every single one of those limitations and add much more to your workflow. We intend to make rapid design review a very simple process for our users with this tool. We all know KeyShot's here to save time for designers, but what if you could spread that efficiency into other departments or share it with your vendors and clients? All right, so I'm going to show everybody how to take advantage, but I want to explain how this is different from some previous add-ons we've had. So prior to the release of KeyShot 2023, our users have had to rely on various options to provide configurators or interactive models. Those options still exist and they have their specific benefits, but this add-on is intended to truly change the way you illustrate your design variations without wasting any precious time. Option 1 has always historically been KeyShot XR. It's still a very useful and powerful add-on, and I won't dive too deep into the specifics on these. So to be succinct, KeyShot XR can render out a configurator like this, or a series of high-quality images to produce an interactive animation in web browsers. I'm honestly a huge proponent of this add-on, and I've seen remarkable results, but the time commitment can be a hurdle. For a turntable like this, we're rendering out at least 18 images to create that seamless experience. Furthermore, sharing these outputs can be tricky without digging into FTP details. The second option has been KeyShot Viewer. This was a free add-on, and our users could share files specifically for the KeyShot Viewer. The goal was to provide a third party the ability to share design feedback without the need to own a KeyShot license, and without the need for the KeyShot user to render out all their potential variations. This was a popular add-on, but still didn't quite address the needs of our users. The KeyShot WebViewer add-on in 2023 solves all these issues and provides our users with an exponential amount of efficiency. So what does that mean for me? That means you can now share files for design review with great ease. The recipients of your KeyShot scene can now view all material and geometry variations on any browser via any device. As long as your recipients have a browser and internet access, they can see your scene via PC, Mac, or iOS and Android devices. You can also access your scenes via any workstation. These are saved on your personal KeyShot Cloud library when upgrading to a KeyShot 2023 Pro subscription license. We provide 10 gigabytes of space per user with this add-on. Again, as a longtime KeyShot employee and user who demos this very regularly, I have yet to even approach 2 gigabytes on my personal cloud. I think most users are going to be shocked at how small the output size is. And of course, another tremendous advantage is the potential for the end user to interact. Development really made magic with this add-on in every possible aspect. WebViewer is the perfect combination of previous add-ons with an extra layer of speed and efficiency. This gives our users full control over presenting a myriad of design variations. To add to this, KeyShot is constantly updating and developing this flagship add-on. The next dot release will include the ability to add KeyShot XR outputs, so it truly will be the best of both worlds. Okay, so let's jump into KeyShot. Okay, I have a scene open here, and I just kind of want to go over all the different components that make up the WebViewer output. It's really our multi-materials, our model sets, our cameras, our environments, and our studios. Now, I won't go too deep on these separate components because we do have amazing quick tips and webinars available on our YouTube page. So if you have any questions, I would definitely suggest checking that out. But let's take a look at our multi-materials in this scene. So as I double click a part, we're going to see corresponding multi-materials here. I have at least 3 applied to every single piece of geometry in this scene. So as I click around here, you can see there's tons of variation on probably about 20 parts or so. The next component is model sets. I really love model sets. I think a lot of customers don't even realize this feature exists. So if we're in our scene tab, you'll see these 2 little arrows here if you're in Pro. When you click that, you're going to open up your model sets. And you can think of these like layers in Photoshop to control the visibility of your geometry. So in this example, I have a model set for 3D letters or 2D letters. In the end output, the viewer will be able to switch between those two. For design purposes, maybe we're going to have a high top sneaker in one model set and a low top sneaker in one model set. Treat that like a master file, have everything built in there, and render out our geometry and material variations for both. So again, really, really powerful tool in KeyShot. If you're not taking advantage of this, definitely check out some of the videos we have. And of course, WebViewer is going to tie together our cameras. We can use these as a reference point when our viewer is viewing in a browser, so they can have some spots to jump around to. Think of it as, storyboarding what you actually want them to do close-ups on and change around for you. I have a couple of different environments here just for that viewer to be able to change and see some different lighting. And we can also include studios. Now, again, if you haven't used this, I would strongly suggest checking out some of our videos. Studios basically let you tie together all these assets and cycle through them in the real-time view. So here I have a front studio with my front camera, my front environment, my corresponding model sets. Same for my side view, then the letters, and then a badge close-up. Personally, I like this for the ability to cycle through studios and not have to manually change my camera and environment and model sets. We can tie these in to the WebViewer output as well. So to get really, really in depth, we can open up the configurator wizard. And we can go through here to define our parent and component relationships, which is basically how we're defining what model sets are available. Again, I won't go too deep into that. We do have a lot of videos available. We can specify which material variations are going to be included. And we can even set up material ways. So we can lock in color combos for that viewer so they can't go crazy and create a color combination that doesn't necessarily exist. We can also include our studios here. And this data will be transferred over to the WebViewer output. But keep in mind, with the next release, we're going to have a configurator UI built into the viewer to make that process a lot more intuitive. Now, a couple things I want to show you guys for best practice. UV unwrapping and baking your textures is going to make a huge, huge difference. So I'll quickly do that on one of these parts here. Right click and we'll unwrap UV. If you've never used this in KeyShot before, remarkably easy. We get a new window with our wireframe. I'll unwrap my shell. And now we can UV that. I would take advantage of UV mapping whenever possible for the WebViewer. It's going to give you much higher texture output. Another thing to keep in mind is going to be the environment. So if I scroll out here, when working in KeyShot, it's always going to size the environment for the geometry that you're importing. I would suggest making this environment as tight as possible. So within the environment menu under settings and our transform dropdown, I'm just going to manually reduce the size and get it as small as possible. The truth is, with the WebViewer output, the HDRI environment is an expensive resource and will eat up some of their CPU or GPU, and you'll get a much faster loading time if you reduce the size of that environment and much higher quality textures if you're baking them in there. Another really, really useful tool here is going to be our heads up display. That's hotkey H, and you'll notice I have this little menu in the top left-hand corner. In my opinion, for WebViewer outputs, the most important value here is going to be your triangle count. So typically, we suggest keeping it, below 10 million triangles, but it really depends on the hardware of the person viewing the scene. So if you're sending to somebody on a high-end Windows PC and they have a very high-end GPU, high triangle count might not be a big deal. You can put some complex textures in there. But if you're sending this to somebody on an Android phone who doesn't have Wi-Fi, you might want to scale things down as much as possible. Now let's open the actual viewer interface here. So I just pressed hotkey V to bring this up. And it's a really, really, really straightforward menu. We're just going to name the scene. We can password protect if we want to make it confidential. And then we have some quality presets here. I find balanced to be a pretty good option 99% of the time. But again, if you know you're sending somebody with really high-end PC, try high quality. Occasionally, I'll just do all three of them and have different options to send out because again, this doesn't take up that much space. As we go down here, we have advanced quality. We can modify the environment resolution, the texture resolution, and the texture compression. My personal preference is to sacrifice some of that environment resolution and give it to textures, but I would suggest messing around with this. Everybody's use case is going to be a little bit different. Now, we also have an AR output for iOS devices. And then down here, you're going to see how much storage I've actually used. So I mentioned you get 10 gigabytes of storage with the add-on per user. I'm going to X out of here really quick and open up my cloud library. So there's a new button here in 2023 that shows all the scenes you've uploaded. So when I say you can access these from any device, this is where you can access them. And with 2023 subscription, you just need to sign in on the portal. Again, I have dozens here, and I'm at 1.6 gigabytes out of 10. On average, these are around anywhere from 20 to 100 megabytes. Your mileage may vary, but I have been very, very impressed at how small the file size actually is. And of course, you can go back and delete these as you need to make more space. So let's go ahead and upload this. And then I'm going to switch over and show you a different best practices menu as well. So we'll just click upload. And while that is baking, let's go back to our PowerPoint. And typically, it doesn't take very long at all to actually get that URL. About 2 minutes on average, really. But because we're presenting today, it might take a little bit longer. So I'll go over these best practices just one more time. So again, keep the number of parts low if possible. The best way to think about it is it'll be a lot smoother if you have 10 parts with 1,000 triangles each, as opposed to 1,000 parts with 10 triangles each. So again, split surfaces, get rid of geometry where you can if you find that the scene is lagging a little bit, but I find them to be pretty smooth. Again, UV map whenever possible and keep that environment size as tight as possible. Be sure to check out our Luminaries community today. We're going to upload a new post that goes into the best practices in great detail. All right, let's take a look at the actual output. Here we go. So I'm just opening it in Chrome. Here's the URL that KeyShot generated. And we can now move the model around. I can zoom in. And let's take a look at our menu down here and see what we're working with. So this first icon is going to be the geometry variations. So again, my example was being able to switch between 2D or 3D letters. So you might have model variations like the high top and the low top. Maybe you're showing a barbecue and the components are going to be accessories that might be available. Now let's go to the next tab, which is our materials. Every single part that has a multi-material option is listed in this top menu here, and the corresponding material options are listed below. So let's go ahead and switch some out. Super fast, super high quality materials. In terms of material limitations, things like translucence, really complex materials like multi-layer optics don't always come through perfectly. If you've used KeyVR, the material limitations are fairly similar. But again, with future dot updates, we're going to see way higher performance on things like translucent materials. So everyone's use case is going to be different on this. That's truly the beauty of this add-on, the ability to cover countless situations. So if you're a lead designer at a Fortune 500 company presenting renders to a director or a marketing team, we've got you covered. If you're an independent user or a smaller firm that needs to present dozens of presentations to various potential clients on a regular basis, we've got you covered. Or if you're just a hobbyist and you want to show off amazing WebGL outputs, we've got you covered. No matter what your use case is, you'll have a deliverable that contains all the best aspects of KeyShot. And as someone who has used KeyShot for about a decade, I'm confident our users will absolutely love the potential of this add-on. I may be biased as a longtime employee, but this is something that myself and our users have been desperate for. I think this is going to be a remarkable solution to a problem we've all had for years as designers, and that is sharing your design iterations rapidly and seamlessly. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and hand this back off to Jimin.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Jordan. That was great. Before jumping into Q&A, I wanted to mention that if you are excited to try out the WebViewer for yourself, please feel free to email WebViewer at luxion.com for a free unrestricted trial. On our luminaries page, you will also see WebViewer challenges and contests, so please don't miss out and go check it out. Now, on to Q&A. I'm sure many of you might recognize them from the numerous quick tips, tutorials, and deep dive webinars over the years. I'd like to introduce our creative specialist from the product team, designer, content creator, all-around KeyShot expert, Kareem Merchant. Kareem, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jim, and appreciate it. Before I jump into Q&A, I actually, Jordan, do you mind pulling up KeyShot real quick? I wanted to point something out in the WebViewer upload window that I don't think you mentioned.
Is that George Fernandez from Harbor Freight I see asking a question?
Yeah, and actually, let me make a comment here on that. So George's question was, since the environment is recommended to decrease in size, which affects your pin lighting and setups, are you suggesting to create separate KeyShot files to use this feature? Now, yes, it would be ideal if you optimized your scenes for KeyShot WebViewer. The end result is going to be a more efficient scene at the end for whoever's viewing it on your end. You don't need to. The only thing that you're going to sacrifice is potential performance on the end. But like Jordan mentioned, if the person on the other end is using a fairly powerful computer, it shouldn't be an issue. The issue more lies where people are accessing it from their phones or, you know, like an iPad or something that's not quite as well suited to dealing with those heavy things. So hopefully that answers your question, George. And Jordan, if you have anything you want to chime in on that, feel free.
That covers it, definitely.
Yeah. So I did want to point out here on the upload window, you see that little checkbox right underneath the images where it says render still images from my list of cameras. So that's a really fun feature. If you have a bunch of different cameras, you don't have renders you want to attach, but you just want to generate those really quickly, you can just click that box. And then when you hit upload, it's going to take whatever camera views you've already saved and include those under your images tab in the WebViewer. Now, the one thing I do want to say about that is those images come out fairly low resolution. So if you're looking for a high resolution version, because obviously the WebViewer is going to be a little bit lower resolution since it's web-based, you may want to actually render out those at specific resolutions that you set. You will not be able to control the resolution if you hit that checkbox. Another option that I've seen customers use often is where they just kind of let the screen res up a little bit and then they screenshot the scene. That way they can just let it res up to whatever resolution they'd like, and then they attach those images as well. Just some quick workflows to create some supplementary images to show. And the fun part about that images tab too is, let's say you're uploading you know, a shoe scene or something, and you want to include CMF information. You don't just have to put renders in these areas. You can also put, you know, CMF documentation. You can put isometric drawings, all kinds of different information. Basically, you can just use this as a supplementary information box as long as it's a image that you're dropping in there. But yeah, past that, let's get back to some Q&A. So WebViewer, emissive materials, and scene lights. HDRIs obviously are the best way to go. Emissive materials do come through. They just aren't providing much light. If you guys have experience with VR or you know, using different web-based things, the physical lights don't tend to come through. Emissive lights, you really got to crank up the emissive power for them to actually provide any light in the scene, which could cause really a lot of blowouts and different things. So I highly recommend relying on the HDRI for your lighting. Emissive materials obviously do a great job if you're trying to show like a button or some sort of illuminated surface, you know, but when it comes to lighting, I would focus specifically on using HDRIs. We haven't got too many questions coming in here, so if you guys do have questions, feel free to drop them in that Q&A chat. A couple other questions that we've got in the past that I think are important to reference here. So is the WebViewer compatible with all licenses? I think Jimin actually touched on this briefly. In the past, if you had a pro license pre-subscription era, you would need a pro license to be able to use that. These days, you need to have a subscription license to be able to use WebViewer. The benefit of that is that going forward, as we update, which we're doing constantly with a subscription license, you're always getting those latest updates as soon as they come out. And I know Jordan mentioned a couple times that we are going to be receiving some updates here very shortly. Among those updates are going to be KeyShot XRs being able to be hosted on your WebViewer. And that actually leads me to what's included in the web add-on package. So the web add-on package has our XRs, our XR configurators, and our web viewer. And what's great about that is that you can use those XRs eventually in our web viewer. So let's say you want to ship to this web viewer to a customer or a client. You want to use it for an internal review, get some stakeholders on board somewhere else in the company. It's a great way for you to get some 360 views or different angles at a really high resolution so that they can see that. Web viewer is great because they can kind of, get into the nitty gritty of what's going on in your product, zoom in on details. Let's say you have a manager somewhere else in the company or someone who has some input. They can just quickly take screenshots, send you some notations and information, like if it's a back and forth kind of conversation. And then they can also reference the XRs, or they can reference the images that are being supplied as supplementary information to better suss out the details that may not come out as clearly in the regular web viewer. And then Jimin, I don't know if you can kind of jump in here and make a comment. I'm sure plenty of people are wondering how much the web viewer actually costs. So if Jordan or Jimin, you guys can make a comment on that, that would be great.
Yeah, certainly. So currently the WebViewer package is an add-on product. It's priced annually at $468 a year.
Excellent. Thank you, Jimin.
And I see a question in here about the security with the geometry. So since the geometry was technically part of the old KeyShot viewer, since it was a BIP, this being WebGL, there's basically no way to extract geometry when you're going through a URL, correct?
Correct. There's no way. There's no geometry information on there. Anything that goes up there, it's simply a viewing portal. You can't take any geometry from it. Yeah, so that's a great question. I know security is always a major issue. We did have a question about security. I'd love to answer that a little bit more in depth. Maybe you can shoot Jimin over an email. Our storage is being supported through AWS, so whatever security that they have, that's what we're using. Yeah, I'd love to get a more accurate answer on that as well. And then lastly, it seems like we're not getting too many more questions in here. Can you buy more storage if you run out of space? That would be a great question. As of now, you cannot buy more storage. We'd like to move towards the ability to do so. But as of now, we can't. And as Jordan mentioned, and I don't know if you saw on his own, he had about 1.6 gigs used. I myself have a ton of different scenes as well, and I believe I'm under the 2 gig mark. If you are hitting that 10 gig mark, you have a lot of scenes there that are probably not getting viewed anymore. So for most users, I would say that the 10 gig limit is going to be more than sufficient for now. Obviously, there's going to be a few users that blow past that significantly faster than anybody else. I would reach out to Jimin specifically if you are encountering that problem. But yeah, I mean, we would love to open it up to more purchasing. Maybe that's something that we'll be doing in the future.
I see a question about embedding it in the website. It's just going to be HTML magic and embedding that URL, really. If you go on our website to the web viewer section, there's quite a few examples of the real output embedded on our page.
Yeah, Sandeep, we actually have a quick tip on XRs. XRs are the way to go for embedding that information on your website. Right now, the web viewer is very much a viewing portal. But hopefully in the future, there are ways to kind of push out from the web viewer and get to other places within your organization for needs that you might have specifically for that. Well, if nobody has any other questions, maybe give it another couple seconds here to see if anything pops up. I think I'll pass it back to Jim in here and we can wrap things up.
Hey, great. Well, thank you all. Once again, if you would like a free unrestricted trial, please email webviewer@luxion.com. Thank you all for joining us today. Stay tuned for the next webinar. And of course, we're better to get this information than to follow us on all our social media platforms for the latest updates. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day.